Picture the Soviet Union, endless queues, empty shelves, a supermarket with nothing but jars of pickles and vinegar. Yet somehow people survived. They ate, they dressed, they celebrated weddings. How? Through the black market. This so-called second economy was enormous. By the 1970s, estimates suggest it made up between 10 and 20% of Soviet GDP. Some Western economists believed the number was even higher, closer to a quarter of all Soviet economic activity. Sociologists like Gregory Grossman described it as the economy that actually worked. Food was at the center of it. In Moscow during the 1980s, the official ration was half a kilo of meat per person per week. In Sverdlovsk, sugar disappeared for months. In Leningrad, people lined up at 4 a.m. just for butter, often leaving empty-handed. Yet on the black market, you could buy meat, sugar and dairy, at 3 to 5 times the state price. Kolkhoz farmers played a key role. Legally, they were supposed to hand over their harvest to the collective, but almost everyone sold food privately. In Armenia and Georgia, families made homemade brandy and wine, trading it for cash or goods. In Ukraine, whole villages pooled crops to smuggle into cities. The numbers are staggering. By the late 1970s, private plots, just 3% of Soviet farmland, were producing over 25% of vegetables and 40% of potatoes. Then there was clothing and luxury. Soviet youth lusted after Western fashion. Levi's jeans smuggled in by sailors sold for 150 to 200 rubles, when the average monthly wage was only 120 rubles. A pack of Marlboros could cost 5 rubles, nearly a day's wages for some workers. Tape recorders, Walkmans, even chewing gum became underground currency. Factories too were complicit. Workers and managers created what was called left production. One washing machine for the state, one extra for the black market. In 1975, police in Leningrad discovered a factory producing hundreds of unauthorized refrigerators at night. In another case, an entire line of television sets was diverted into the underground economy. Services joined the trade. Doctors accepted bribes, a bottle of vodka, boxes of chocolates, or straight cash for faster treatment. Teachers gave private lessons illegally. Taxi drivers turned off their meters, demanding 3 times the state fare. Even electricity was stolen. Engineers wired entire apartment blocks to siphon power for illegal workshops. By the late 1970s, the scale was undeniable. Soviet sociologists estimated that 70% of households engaged in black market transactions regularly. Western scholars suggested up to 30 million Soviets were employed in the shadow economy, nearly the size of France's workforce, and corruption ran from the bottom up. Police raided speculators, confiscated goods, then resold them. Some local party bosses quietly ran their own networks. Even Politburo families weren't immune. Accounts describe Brezhnev's relatives using blat, the Soviet system of favors and connections, to access Western cars, caviar, and French champagne. One anecdote tells it all. In the early 1980s, a Soviet bride's family in Moscow organized an entire wedding banquet. Not through official stores, but through the black market. Meat, fish, vodka, even the band's sound equipment came from underground traders. Without them, the wedding would have been nothing but dry bread and pickles. By the 1980s, scholars like Tatiana Zaslavskaya argued that the second economy had become the only functioning glue of Soviet society. Without it, millions would have starved. Even Mikhail Gorbachev admitted that by the late Brezhnev years, the black market was inseparable from everyday life. And yet, officially, speculation was a crime. Soviet propaganda films denounced traders as parasites. Thousands were arrested, some faced prison, but the arrests never slowed it. In fact, the harsher the shortages, the bigger the shadow economy grew. This is the ultimate irony. The USSR, a system built to abolish capitalism, couldn't survive without its own underground capitalism. The planned economy failed so badly that survival itself had to be outsourced to the black market. The Soviet state never admitted it. But every Soviet citizen knew the truth. The real economy wasn't in the plan, it was in the shadows.